this is the part where we're going to start graphing the equations. I'm going to have you write this down where it says graph of an equation. When you graph an equation, it's the set of all the ordered pairs that are solutions to that equation. Now, I'm not sure if you caught this, but it says all ordered pairs. There's going to be a ton of them, and we're not going to literally graph all of them because it would take forever. When we do our steps down here, when graphing 1 through 4, number 2, we're going to just pick 3 ordered pairs. The reason we're picking 3 is we want to get enough that shows that we have a straight line going. If we have a mistake and we don't get a straight line out of our 3 points, then we know we made a mistake without having to graph 20 of them. 3 is enough to figure out if we made a mistake or not. As long as we put arrows on our line when we connect, that shows all of the ordered pairs. So when we graph on this section, a couple things to remember. Number 1, we got to make sure that y is first in our equation. Y is first in the example we did here, but it wasn't first in the other questions that we did. See, there was x, 2x was first, x was first here. So for today, because this is our first time looking at this learning target, I will always put y first. But as we get going, y won't be first, and that will be our priority, is to get y first. Number 2 in our list, make a table of values. We're going to make an x and y table. Remember, on ordered pairs, x is first, y is second, so that's why we're going to make a table. And we're going to actually use these numbers pretty much all the time because it's important to get negative numbers. When we do graph parabolas in the future, you're going to need negative numbers to see if it is 1. 0 and 1 are nice because when you multiply by these numbers, they keep them small. When we use a grid, we're going to try to get our values all to fit on a small coordinate grid. Number 3 says to graph the ordered pairs, and we got to connect those. We're going to use a straight edge, keep it straight, nice and neat, and we're going to graph those on a coordinate grid. Number 4, we have to label our line. Labeling our line means when we get our arrows on and make our line, at the top of our line, we're actually going to write an equation like this, for example, next to our work, just to keep things organized. So let's see what this looks like with an example. Just a couple reminders before we head out here. The graph of an equation in 2 variables is a set of points in a coordinate plane that represent all of the solutions of the equation. An equation whose graph is a line is called a linear function. That's important. An equation whose graph is a line, that's called a linear equation. And that's not anything too crazy because the word line is right there. So if you make a line when you graph, it's called a linear equation. And below is what I mean by an x and y chart. Here's our first example. Your practice will say graph the solution to the equation right here. So they'll give you an equation. Notice right away that y is first. That's very important. Again, I'll make sure all of them have y first in this practice set. Now it says to make an x and y table, so we're going to do that. So I'm going to make a little chart here. X's are always first, y's are always second. And remember, we're going to use those numbers of -1, 0, and 1. So we're going to write those down on our x side right away. And I like writing in order from least to greatest so that when I get my answers over here, they should also be in some type of order. Back to our equation right here. I'm going to write that over here and show my work. So y equals negative. Now I have to write my x value next, but we're going to try -1 this time. Watch how I write that in here. -1. I didn't count that as my negative sign. That was part of my original equation. X is what I'm substituting in, and I decided to use -1. I could have used -4. I could have used -10. I can use anything I want to. I'm trying to keep my numbers small to keep my math simpler. So I substituted that in. I'm going to copy the rest of the equation down, and then I have to solve this. Now before PEMDAS, we fix our subtraction signs. So to fix this, I would plus plus, and then I'm going to do my math. +1 plus a +1 is a 2. So y, bring everything else down, equals 2. So when I substituted in a -1, my y turned out to be a 2. So I'm going to write a 2 next to his partner. That is my first ordered pair. My second ordered pair, I used 0 for x, so I'm going to start all over. Going back to the original equation, y equals negative. Instead of x, I'm going to write a 0. And I'm going to bring everything else down, plus 1. Okay. Now I would fix this negative sign to a plus minus, but 0 is not positive nor negative, so 0 is just 0. And 0 plus 1 is 1. I'm going to bring everything else down. So when I use 0 as my x, my answer is 1. So I'm going to put a 1 with his partner of 0. That's my second ordered pair. I have one more to go, so I'm going to go back to my original equation. Y equals negative. Now my x here is a 1, so I'm just going to write a 1 here. And then I'm going to bring everything else down, plus 1. Okay. Now if you want to plus minus this, you can. You don't have to in this situation, but I'm going to just to make sure. -1 plus 1 is 0. And I'm going to bring everything else down. So when I use a 1 for my x, my answer was 0. So I'm going to write the 0 over with his partner of 1. That is my third ordered pair. And that's all I have to have. Now I'm going to graph these. So starting with the first ordered pair, -1, comma 2, starting at the origin. -1 goes left, 2 goes up. I just graphed that ordered pair. Second one is 0, comma 1, so start at the origin. 0 stays, 1 goes up. There's my second ordered pair. The third one is 1, comma 0. Starting at the origin, right 1, 0 stays. I just graphed my third ordered pair. Now I have to connect these points with a straight line, so use a straight edge. I'm going to extend that line all the way through. I'm going to try that again. Go all the way through my graph. I'm going to put arrows on the ends of these lines here. That way it shows all of the points on this line. Arrows show infinity, so all the points up here and off of my paper. So that's important. Next, I'm going to label my line. So up at the top, where this arrow is, I'm going to write my equation right next to it. Y equals -x plus 1. That's what I mean by labeling line. That's way if I have two lines on this graph, I know this line goes with this equation. Now, it makes a straight line, which means this is a linear function, or a linear equation. Now down here, I asked the question, is this equation a function? Functions were from our last lesson. Well, let's take a look at the vertical line test. If I drew vertical lines through these 3 points, would I hit more than 1 point at a time? No. So is it a function? Yes, it is a function.